Κυρία Μιχαηλίδου, σε εσάς κατευθείαν. Η κυρία Μιχαηλίδου από τα οικονομολόγος θα μας μιλήσει.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Νομίζω όμως ότι... εντάξει, ευχαριστώ. Έχω ένα PowerPoint κι εγώ, ως οικονομολόγος ή ακαδημαϊκός. Δυστυχώς θα πρέπει να απευθυνθώ σε αυτό, αλλά δεν ξέρω πού βρίσκεται αυτή τη στιγμή. Το clicker. Ναι. I think we progressed from yesterday, so there is a technological innovation, so there is hope. Don't speak too soon. Όχι, να το. Fantastic. Oh no, I'm doing it. Or not. So I'd like to start by thanking Mr. Tsomokos and the committee of the Delphi Forum for having us here, giving us the opportunity to meet each other, but also giving us the opportunity to escape the city on such a nice day. And I would also like to start by excusing myself as I come from the opposite side of my co-panelists. And by opposite side, I mean the boring side. So these are the guys that make things happen. They are the guys that move the market. Guys and ladies, I mean. And they are the agents that actually are the markets themselves. What I do is sit back, observe, and at best, and I hope we will be able to come up with some helpful suggestions, provide some suggestions on how to assist towards changing, reforming the media market. Media reform and where I stand, it's regulatory reform. And I'm sure you've all heard of the OECD toolkit, or else the εργαλειοθήκη. I'm saying εργαλειοθήκη, perhaps by now you all understand I'm Greek from my accent, but because I'm Greek, I'd like to emphasize on the Greek hospitality and make sure that the rest of our guests, including Fabrizio, who are not Greek within this panel, are able to somehow benefit from this hospitality, at least on that level. So, what is the toolkit and what is the OECD toolkit and what would an organization that tries to assist through technological support in deregulating markets would do? So a toolkit, and in this case the OECD toolkit, is some kind of competition exercise that tries to trace and bring upon issues that might prohibit competition issues and might bring upon oligopolists in the market, in our case, the media market. They can be used broadly in three main ways. This is with current legislation or regulations, upon the design of new ones, that is legislation, and when thinking of new policy making. Fantastic. You already know of the previous toolkit. Perhaps you've heard the discussions about super essential things such as the life cycle of milk, or if the shops are going to be open on Sunday, which was the first toolkit. The second toolkit, and then the third one, which is actually a prerequisite of the third memorandum by the now Quartet, has to do with 4 markets. 5, but essentially the 4. Media, here we are. The construction sector, which some of you, I'm not going to give you my position on that, might consider as 1. E-commerce and wholesale trade would be of everything. And then there is a bit of the rest of the manufacturing, meaning what did not take place in the previous toolkit. How it works? It works primarily through defining the market. What is the media market? And you might think that this might be a technical question, or you might think that this is an academic question, but in fact it's worth all of the juice is. It means who is in and who is out. And all the vested interests are the most predominant in the beginning of the project. So after realizing what the market is, we go into an initial scan of all regulation and legislation. This is primary and secondary, from presidential degrees to ministerial decisions and how these have been applied or not. and an in-depth analysis of the ones that we do consider to be hindering competition, then a formulation of some recommendations that we consider pertinent. Upon these recommendations, we proceed into some kind of quantitative or qualitative exercises to see what the impact of such might be in the economy, and if they're needed, in fact. Then we do draft a report and we circulate the report, or at least that's the plan. At this point, it's important to note that throughout all these 7 steps, and even before the initiation of the first, we try to engage, or each kind of institution proceeding into such an activity tries to engage all related stakeholders. These are predominantly the government of the country, the Ministry of the Economy, but also we have the collaboration of all the Secretary Generals of the relevant ministries. But then it also goes to the quartet, as well as relevant stakeholders such as trade unions or professional associations that many of you represent or belong to. How it works and which legislation we care about. I will start for which legislation we do not care about, so people that do belong in politics here do not have troubles with that. Of course, we're aware, and I'm aware, at least as an individual, that it's the expression that I am, it's what I'm expressing here. Of course, we're aware there is quite a lot of anti-competitive legislation around whose main purpose is not to be competitive. Its main purpose is shield certain spheres of public interest. So this could be things such as, and I'm not trying to open a debate here, but the unified price of books. So where the state believes that there could be a higher potential benefit to the community than the cost of competition. And as long as this legislation is the only way that we can achieve, or the government can achieve this policy, then institutions like mine stand off. You jinxed me, I think. No? There we go. So we try to trace the following legislation. Legislation in 4 categories and 4 directions. The ones that limit the number and range of suppliers. Legislation that has to do with limiting the ability of suppliers to compete. Limiting their incentives to compete. And some kind of other legislation that has to do with essential information provided to consumers. 2 minutes. Okay, wow. I was hoping you would give me 4. Where do we go and where do we start? We start by defining the sector, which, as you would imagine, has all the publishing within it, has telecommunication, has television production and broadcasting. It has all kind of information service technologies. And the big question, because what we try to do is see how one can review legislation in the most efficient way, is seeing it vertically and in a vertical and in a parallel, if you want, in a horizontal, way. So, I'm sorry, it's just that Mrs. Tsapanidou made me quite worried about time here. One big question is whether telecommunications would be in, because of course they do fit in the entire, what my colleagues were talking about before, digital media age. And then I will close with 2 slides. Or I can even talk to you about them. Going back to the prototype of what we do, these 4 main categories, I will talk about perhaps that's something everything is expecting about, which is the latest media bill, the so-called PAPAS legislation. So what we do is try to see whether some parts of new legislation fit in and could potentially be problematic. So is licensing, is exclusive right to suppliers a hindrance to competition? Is the fact that we can have only 4 licenses? Is the fact that the licenses need to be in industries of 200 journalists and 400 employees? Is this limiting the number of suppliers? Is the standard setting via high definition limiting the ability of suppliers to compete? And with regards to DGA, for example, and the self-regulatory climate that is behind it, does this reduce incentives of suppliers to compete, including the entrance and exit costs? And what about choices and information available to customers. Going back to the third function, which is new policy planning. The draft internet bill could potentially be prohibiting competition. However, and that's where I'm ending, none of us is sure about anything of the above. And there's a big and substantial work to be done about investigating the technical details of such, as well as where Greece stands in an international comparative level. Thank you, and sorry for abusing your time.